Welcome back. Since almost the beginning of writing, there have been accounts of the undead, or at least fear of the undead. Modern science will tell you that this may have been due to the sudden movements that corpses can make, and therefore superstition caught on that sometimes the dead don't stay dead. But as I think about how they were afraid that the dead didn't stay dead, I begin to question why. People have been dying for as long as people have been alive. If it's never happened, why does that fear persist? Welcome to the Occult and the Apocalypse with Kristen, aka Fire Terra Mama, where I tell you how they took what was once widely known about God, spirituality, and yourself, and how they took that and locked it away. Come with me while I show you what I've learned from science, religion, cultural beliefs, and mythology to turn the occult and the apocalypse into just the hidden and the revealed. Now, if you walk through any cemetery that came before 1900, you're bound to find graves with strange features, like a cage over the top. And this was done honestly to keep the undead from getting out. There have been graves found with bodies with a stake through the heart, and even further back in history, others who were decapitated or even tied up, all lending example of how serious this belief that this fear was, the concept that someone could rise from the dead. Now, the stake through the heart is very specific to vampire lore, but the rest goes back much further to ancient Mesopotamia. Now, there are different ancient gods and or demons that have consumed blood throughout cultures like Bastet in Egypt. And Jesus told you to consume figuratively his body and his blood for everlasting life. We're also told in the Bible not to consume blood, so it's clearly something that was being done. So it seems like there are some religious concepts around the ingestion of blood, but certainly no actual mentions of actual vampires. And the Bible is a book that has a talking donkey in it. It seems that the lore of vampires began with Vlad the Impaler and was made even more famous by the fictionalization of him into Count Dracula of Transylvania, which was actually his origin and surname. They really saw a rise in vampire lore in the Enlightenment period. Mystics were becoming more popular, and satanic panic was sweeping through the world due to the deep hold that Abrahamic religions had on the world as a whole, coupled by a surge in important scientific discoveries, causing for the wanting to push away superstition and find more rational explanations for things. Now, in the Catholic Church, Pope Benedict XIV, listed as 1675 to 1758, wrote the only known papal document regarding vampires. He was writing on the proper treatment of the bodies of saints, and within that writing, there's a chapter on the cruel mistreatment and mutilation of corpses believed to be vampires. But the vampires and the undead lore persists, and it makes you think about the real vampires that you should really be afraid of. Energy vampires. The people who drag you down. They're often found putting themselves in the role of victim or damsel in distress, or even just an overwhelmed person. Physically, they can reflect this lack of light in places like their eyes, their hair, their skin, etc. Their lives are routinely seen to hit bumps and bruises along the way, and often they'll come to you to discuss their problems or get advice. They're often disguised as a friend, however, you'll probably eventually notice that you're not receiving as much from the relationship. Now, you may notice as time goes on, with this pairing, you'll start to feel or look like you're losing the light that you've always been able to generate, and your emotions and looks and general health and happiness will begin to go down. You may find yourself mentally preparing to have to interact with this person, or feel instinctually like you should hold information back, but without really truly knowing why. Now, these are people who leave you feeling drained, and you'll find they'll start draining your essence faster than you can generate it, dropping your personal vibration down. You may really start to realize that it's not a reciprocal relationship and may even feel physically ill after interacting with them for long periods of time. Now, these people tend to, from a real life 3D perspective, fall into the category of personality disorders. You may notice great improvement in health, finances, looks, energy, and more when you're separated by time or distance from this person. But energetic vampires are hardly the undead, are they? Well, undead, probably not. Immortal? That's not entirely off the table, at least for some of them. Immortality is built into the human story pretty much through most of the lenses that you can view the world through. Adam and Eve were immortal until they ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And in the Sumerian flood myth, they had forgotten to assign a lifespan to humans, which led to overpopulation, which led to the flood. The gods were immortal in all religions unless killed by another god, except in Norse mythology, where it was them receiving the immortality from eating from the tree of life. Now, like I said from the beginning, the undead have been feared since some of the earliest memories of human writing. And if that's not enough to make you wonder, the first kings lists and the beginning of biblical genealogy stretches hundreds, if not thousands, of years for each individual. Now, you'll hear whispers of conspiracy theories of elite that never die, simply transferring from body to body or starting over decades later. Conspiracy theories so large, in fact, that I've recently heard that they were mentioned in some emails in some files that have recently been released for public review. I've not seen them directly. I let other people research those files, but I have seen some pretty convincing screenshots. Now, pretty much every religion believes that the soul is, in fact, immortal. And in Hinduism, they believe that we continue a cycle of rebirth until you have resolved all of your karma. Christianity believes in resurrection, and all three Abrahamic religions have figures who ascended to heaven without experiencing death. So this concept within the conspiracy theory that some people, usually identified as elite, who truly feed off of the energy of just the regular people like you and I, may in fact be immortal, it's not entirely off the table. That these people may have the resources and the ability to have found a technique or a technology to do so, I haven't seen it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's been the goal all along. But this idea of someone in the elite class being immortal is not a new one. In fact, there's quite a lot of lore around a famous man who claims immortality. It's the tale of the Count of Saint Germain. Now, as the story goes, the Count of Saint Germain showed up in Europe in high society crowds. He was considered a great philosopher, was well educated, and made advances in scientific, the arts, alchemy, and philosophy. He spent time with Mozart, Casanova, and Voltaire. He's attributed 59 musical works of various types, two 18th century manuscripts, one which symbolically follows a journey of spiritual initiation, which has been published multiple times in the centuries since, and the other detailing a magical ritual one can do to gain great wealth and supernaturally long life, last published in 2015. Now, he claimed to be 500 years old in the 1700s and went by many titles. There are no known facts about his origin or background. He did later in life, to his closest friend, claim to be the son of the Prince of Transylvania, Francis II Rzuski. However, there's no evidence to confirm or refute this. There's a theory that Francis II's eldest son may have been listed as deceased and raised under another name, but there are no real facts to support this. However, it would be a good reason why he was so well educated and so wealthy. The Count was also fond of secret societies, being a member of both the Bavarian Illuminati, but also of the Freesmiths, a society much more hidden and withdrawn from public view than the Freemasons. He is said by Voltaire to be a man who does not die and knows everything, and he became incredibly close with Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel, who considered him, quote, one of the greatest philosophers ever, unquote. Now, he spent a lot of time with Prince Charles towards the end of his life. They made gemstones and jewelry together, as well as alchemical experiments. Now, interestingly enough, it was 1784, when Prince Charles was away and staying in Kassel, that the Count is said to have died. He's said to have died on February 27th and buried on March 2nd, both being recorded in the St. Nikolai Church Register. About a month later, the mayor signed a proclamation to auction off his things if no family came forward to collect them within a month. Now, interestingly enough, the accounting of his estate had very little in the way of money or even possessions. It had some clothes, some sundries like sunglasses and toothbrushes, but no diamonds, no jewels, no mementos of his travels, no personal effects like his beloved violin, and no notes or letters. None of the things that you would have taken with you as you moved around. All missing. Throughout time, he has been called many things: a master of ancient wisdom, an ascended master, and much more. And since taking his leave from either Earth or society, you decide for yourself, many have claimed to meet him and learn from him. Helena Blavatsky in 1892, Annie Besant in 1896, C.W. Leadbeater at an unknown time, as well as Guy Ballard, who claimed to meet him on Mount Shasta in 1930. Now, he went on to found the I Am activity, and then later the Saint Germain Foundation, and put out volumes of spiritual content. There are even people who claim that Jesus, Sir Francis Bacon, Shakespeare, and the Count of Saint Germain are all one and the same, either through reincarnation or through the individual just reinventing themselves every few hundred years and actually being immortal. Now, knowing what I know and understanding what I understand, that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only changed, then I have no question in the immortality of us all, at least in the essence or power within us. But have some people, through either science or mysticism, which are really two sides to the same coin, found a way to remain in this existence without death in some way? I honestly don't know, but it's not off the table for me in any means. Now, for vampires. The energetic ones are very real, and you should look at your circle and determine who, if anyone, might be one to you and stop feeding them. Stop inviting them in. They can't feed off of your energy without your permission and access. As for the ones that turn into bats and can't be out in the sunlight and need to drink your blood, they're not real. In fact, it probably traces back to a condition called porphyria, which is essentially an attack on the nervous system, and individuals with it can have symptoms such as blistering within 30 minutes of being in the sun as if allergic, as well as other symptoms. In ancient times, ingesting blood seemed to alleviate some of the symptoms. In the most severe cases, the scarring from the blistering can start to erode the nose, the fingers, the hair, the nails, lips, and mouth, as well as deforming the teeth and gum and eye deformation. Think back to that old silent film version of Dracula and compare that to these effects. I think you'll be surprised. In short, a real vampire, one that you have to worry about, doesn't show up looking like a scary monster, but instead acts as an acquaintance or even a trusted friend. And the Immortals, likely all around. But I'll leave that for you to think about. Join me in 2 weeks when we're going to talk about sound, frequency, and vibration, and how and partially why there have been many attempts to basically unalive music, changing it from a healing thing to a harmful thing, and how that's happened multiple times in history. Don't forget to like and subscribe and do all the things. I did post a poll on the YouTube. I'm thinking about shaking things up. I think we're going to do 2 longer episodes a week. And then I think 1 week I'll do a short episode, and the off week I might open myself up to do a live, but I'd like to hear from you, so go visit my community. Make sure to put your opinion out there. In the meantime, thank you for helping me take the occult and the apocalypse into just the hidden and the revealed. I'll see you in a couple weeks.